It started as one of those long, ordinary afternoons that fade into the blur of the week. I'd been staring at my laptop for hours, half working, half drifting. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of typing and the low hum of the heater. Hunger eventually cut through the noise, and without much thought, I opened the delivery app. My thumb hovered over a familiar name, the taco place she used to love. For a second, I hesitated. We hadn't been there in months, not since things between us started feeling strained. Still, I ordered the same thing she always used to get, 2 soft tacos with extra salsa, lime rice, and the spicy sauce she swore made everything better. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe I was trying to feel close to something that had been slipping away. The order confirmation flashed on my screen. 26 minutes. I leaned back and rubbed my eyes, trying to ignore the quiet tension that had become the background of our relationship. Lately, everything between us had been off. The silences were longer, the smiles felt practiced, and her excuses, work, stress, exhaustion, always arrived before the truth could. I told myself every couple goes through phases. This was just ours. When the delivery knock came sooner than expected, it startled me. I tipped the guy, shut the door, and unwrapped the food on the counter. The smell hit instantly: grilled meat, warm tortillas, the sharp tang of cilantro. For a moment, it pulled me back to nights when she'd laugh across the table, stealing bites from my plate. Then I saw it. A small folded note, tucked beneath the receipt, hidden just enough to seem accidental. It wasn't printed, it was written by hand, on a torn piece of notepad paper. I opened it without thinking, expecting some restaurant promotion or thank you message. The handwriting was neat, rounded, almost careful. The words didn't make sense at first, not because they were unclear, but because they weren't meant for me. It said she couldn't wait to see someone that night. There was a heart at the end and an initial that wasn't mine. I froze. The room felt heavier all of a sudden. The refrigerator buzzed somewhere behind me, and the smell of food turned faintly nauseating. I read the note again, slower this time, hoping the meaning would change. It didn't. The order had my name, my address, my details. Yet the message belonged to someone else. I looked at the handwriting again. Casual, intimate, the kind of tone you only use with someone you know deeply. The kind she used to have with me. My mind searched for explanations. Maybe the restaurant reused bags, maybe the note was meant for someone else. Coincidence seemed comforting enough to cling to. But it didn't hold for long. The food order was identical to hers, down to every detail. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a trail. I sat down and stared at the half-eaten taco on my plate. All the small things I had been ignoring began aligning: the late work nights, the locked phone, the way she smiled at her screen before tucking it away. None of it was loud or obvious, but now it all pointed in the same direction. I found the restaurant's number and called, pretending to ask about a missing item. The woman who answered sounded cheerful, unaware of the storm on my end. She mentioned my girlfriend had been there earlier, placing an order, same items, same name. She even laughed, saying how much she liked the food. When the call ended, I just stood there, phone still in my hand. The truth didn't explode, it unfolded, quiet and steady. I picked up the note again, folded it carefully, and slid it into my wallet. It felt strange to keep it, but I needed something tangible, something real to remind me that the unease I'd been feeling wasn't imagined. Outside, life went on as usual, people walking dogs, cars passing, the city humming in its rhythm. Inside, everything felt still. One meal, one note, one small mistake, and the truth had slipped through. That was how I found out. Not through confrontation, not through confession. Just a simple craving for tacos, and a message that wasn't mine. I didn't eat the rest of the food. It sat on the counter growing cold, the smell turning from comforting to unbearable. My mind kept circling back to that note. Every few minutes I would unfold it again, as if maybe this time the words would rearrange themselves into something harmless. But they never did. I couldn't decide what hurt more, the words themselves, or how effortlessly they confirmed everything I'd been trying not to see. For weeks, maybe months, something between us had shifted. She'd grown distant, careful with her words, unreachable at odd hours. I'd told myself I was imagining it, that I was paranoid, that love meant trusting. But deep down, I already knew. The note wasn't proof I wanted. It was proof I'd been ignoring. I opened my phone again and scrolled through the delivery app, this time with a purpose. I checked past orders, looked for patterns, dates, times, places. The taco place appeared more often than I remembered. Some were mine. Some weren't. One order stood out, placed 2 days ago under her name but delivered to a different address. Not our home. My chest tightened. I copied the address and pasted it into the map. It was across town, near the old part of the city, a quiet residential area I didn't recognize. I stared at it for a long moment, debating whether I wanted to know more. Curiosity and dread pulled in opposite directions, but the weight of uncertainty finally won. I grabbed my keys. The drive was short but heavy. Every red light felt longer than it should have. The world outside the car window looked too normal, people walking dogs, children on bikes, a couple holding hands, while inside, everything in me was unraveling in silence. When I reached the street, I slowed down, scanning the numbers on the buildings. The address led to a small apartment complex, unremarkable but well kept. A few lights glowed behind closed curtains. I parked across the street and sat there for a while, engine off, phone in hand, unsure of what I was supposed to do next. Her car was there. Parked neatly in the lot, unmistakable. I stared at it for a long time, hoping I was wrong, that maybe she lent it to someone, that maybe this was all a misunderstanding. But the logic didn't hold up anymore. I didn't go up. I couldn't. I just sat there, watching the front door, time stretching thin. The cold air slipped through the car's vents, and my fingers trembled not from the chill but from something else, the realization that I was already past the point of turning back. Then I saw her. She came out of the building about 20 minutes later. She wasn't alone. There was a man with her, taller, confident, carrying 2 takeout bags from the same taco place. They were laughing about something, easy and unguarded, the kind of laughter she hadn't shared with me in months. My first instinct was to confront them, to demand an explanation, to make her see what she'd done. But I didn't move. I just watched. The sound didn't reach me, but the image said enough. The way she leaned into him. The way his hand brushed her back. The way she smiled like she hadn't in a long time. I took out my phone and, without really thinking, snapped a photo. It wasn't out of anger. It wasn't even for revenge. It was because a part of me still needed something concrete, proof that this wasn't some twisted dream, that the life I thought I had was gone for good. They drove off together. I stayed a few minutes longer, watching the empty doorway where she'd just been, until the streetlights started to blur through my windshield. The silence inside the car felt absolute. When I finally drove home, I didn't turn on the music. The city lights passed in streaks of yellow and white, and everything felt both too sharp and too distant. I thought about the first night we ate at that taco place, how she laughed when salsa dripped onto her shirt, how I told her she'd make a mess of everything one day and she smiled, saying that's what made her real. Back then, I thought I loved that about her. Maybe I still did, in some twisted way. But as I pulled into the driveway, one truth settled quietly: sometimes what breaks you doesn't come with a storm. Sometimes it comes folded inside a paper bag, written in neat letters by someone who never meant to be caught. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept the note on the nightstand, the photo on my phone, and the silence between us louder than ever. Morning came like a punishment. The light felt too sharp, the air too still. I hadn't slept, just drifted in and out of thought, retracing every small memory that now carried a different meaning. Every late night at work, every unanswered message, every casual lie wrapped in affection, it all fell into place with cruel precision. She came home early that morning, just after sunrise. I heard her keys in the door, the faint sound of her shoes on the floor. I stayed still, pretending to be asleep. She moved quietly, almost cautiously, as if she knew silence could keep her safe. The smell of her perfume filled the room, the same scent she started wearing recently, one I hadn't bought her. I waited until I heard the shower running before opening my eyes. Her phone was on the nightstand, face down as always. For a moment I just stared at it. That small piece of glass held everything I didn't want to know. I picked it up, unlocked it, not because I didn't trust her anymore, but because I already knew I shouldn't. The messages were there, waiting like open wounds. A string of casual affection, familiar jokes, the language of intimacy repurposed for someone else. He had the same initial as the one on the note. They talked about plans, dinners, late nights, even the tacos. She called him the same things she used to call me. My chest tightened as I scrolled, but I didn't stop. I wanted to see it all, to confront the full shape of what had been happening behind my back. Each line cut a little deeper, but pain felt easier than confusion. At least pain was clear. When the shower stopped, I put the phone back exactly where it had been. She came out wrapped in a towel, humming softly, pretending the world was the same. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. There was nothing to say that wouldn't destroy what little composure I still had. The rest of the day passed like a blur. She made coffee, talked about errands, asked if I was okay. I answered in half words, detached, calm. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did, but chose not to ask. Denial is a comfortable silence when both people need it. That evening, she said she'd be working late again. I nodded. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and left. The sound of the door closing behind her was softer than it should have been. I waited a few minutes, then followed. Her car led me back to the same street as before. Same building, same parking spot. I parked a little further away this time and watched from a distance. The lights in one of the windows flickered on, second floor, left side. Shadows moved behind the curtains, familiar shapes in unfamiliar company. I waited. Not because I wanted confrontation, but because I needed finality. Proof without doubt, truth without imagination. An hour later, the front door opened. I saw them again, her and the man from before. They looked comfortable, unhurried. He carried groceries this time. She walked beside him, close enough that their shoulders brushed. I watched them disappear inside together. Something inside me went quiet. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was a kind of stillness, the moment after a storm when everything is broken but the air is finally clear. I sat there for a long time, thinking about all the ways I could respond. Anger felt too small. Revenge, pointless. None of it would give me back what I'd lost, the simplicity of believing someone without needing to verify it. When I finally drove home, the streets were empty. I kept my hand steady on the wheel, my mind detached from the act of driving. The city around me glowed in a haze of yellow light, indifferent to what had just collapsed. Back in the apartment, I cleaned the counter, threw away the cold tacos, and emptied the trash. The note was still in my wallet. I took it out, unfolded it, and looked at it one last time. The ink had smudged slightly from where my thumb pressed against it the night before. I didn't tear it or burn it. I just placed it on the counter and left it there, a small monument to the moment I stopped pretending. That night I didn't wait for her to come home. I knew what time she would. I also knew it didn't matter anymore. Some things end quietly, without arguments or slammed doors. Sometimes all it takes is a single piece of paper to show you how long you've been living in the aftermath. The morning after, the apartment felt foreign. Every sound echoed differently, the hum of the fridge, the creak of the floor, even the light seemed colder. She came home just after 9, cheerful, composed, carrying the same air of practiced normalcy that she had perfected over the past months. I was at the table, drinking coffee I didn't taste. When she walked in, I looked up and forced a faint smile. It wasn't forgiveness. It was closure disguised as calm. She talked about work, about how exhausting the night had been. I nodded where it felt appropriate, never breaking the rhythm of her story. My silence must have felt like attention to her. It was easier that way, to let her speak into the illusion a little longer. After a while, I told her I was thinking of ordering food. Something simple. Something familiar. She agreed instantly, said tacos sounded perfect. That small word, perfect, carried an irony I couldn't ignore. When the order arrived, I set the table as if it were any other night. 2 plates, 2 glasses of water, the brown paper bag between us. I took out the food carefully, unwrapping each foil parcel, letting the scent fill the room again. She smiled when she saw the tacos. The same smile that used to mean comfort. Now it only marked the distance between who we had been and who we had become. We ate in silence. Every bite was heavy, deliberate. She didn't notice the folded piece of paper beside her plate at first. Only when she reached for the napkin did she see it. Her hand froze. The note, the same one from the delivery bag, sat there neatly, flattened and refolded. She stared at it for a long time, eyes scanning the words she must have recognized instantly. A faint tremor crossed her face, barely visible but impossible to hide. I kept eating. Not out of cruelty, but because I didn't have anything left to say. There was no speech, no accusation, no dramatic scene. Just the quiet truth sitting between us, written in someone else's handwriting. After a moment, she whispered something, soft, apologetic, maybe desperate. I didn't answer. My silence was the only honesty left between us. When I finished, I stood, placed my plate in the sink, and walked to the door. She followed with her eyes, unmoving. The air between us was thick with all the words that would never be said. I paused at the doorway, not to look back, but to let the weight of the moment settle. There was no victory in leaving, no satisfaction. Just relief, the kind that comes when pain finally stops pretending to be love. Outside, the evening was calm. The world, indifferent. I walked past the parked cars, the rustle of trees, the faint sound of laughter from a nearby window. Ordinary life continued, as it always does, even after everything ends. That night, I checked into a small hotel across town. I sat by the window, looking at the city lights flickering against the glass. Somewhere out there, she was probably still sitting at that table, staring at the note. Maybe realizing that the same thing she took for granted had quietly walked away. It struck me then how fragile love really is, how it can unravel not with shouting or betrayal, but with something as simple as a folded piece of paper in a takeout bag. I didn't need closure from her. The truth was enough. And that was how it ended, not with a fight, but with a meal. One last dinner in silence, where the truth finally took its place at the table.